Thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate it, and appreciate you, Jimmy, for inviting me back here to this. I'm going to touch a little bit on something that happened at Focus on the Family, and then go on to New Life Church in 2007, and then take you through what eventually became the Faith-Based Security Network. And such an honor to speak to you all about that. So I followed Dave a lot, so I stole his idea. And what is the opposite of faith? And I'll just give you the whole presentation here today to think about that, and I'll tell you at the end of it my interpretation for what is the opposite of faith. Dave says plagiarism is the extreme example of praise. so I've plagiarized your idea, but not your exact comment. In 1991, I went to work for Focus on the Family in Colorado Springs, a ministry that was founded, and at the time the president was Dr. James Dobson. They were moving from California to Colorado, and I went out to be their building engineer. And during the course of that, we had some security incidents come up. And my opinion of security prior to that was it wasn't a big thing to me. I had more important things to do. I was building engineer. I was working with the architects and the engineers and the general contractors and the subs, all bringing these wonderful buildings out of the ground. And that's what I enjoyed doing. I thought I was going to be in that for my life, is construction and working with facilities. But so when security started coming up, I said all of the things that you now hear. It won't happen here. We're a ministry. If something does come up, let the police handle it. And we can't look like Fort Knox, and our constituents will feel like it's free. I said all that stuff. I'm guilty. I've been there. And I've never served in law enforcement or military. I was in construction, and before that I was in agriculture. I didn't have anything to do with security, and I didn't even want it. And I even, well, let's just say I wasn't a fan of security. And on May 2nd of 1996, after we had done some serious planning at Focus on the Family for security because of Oklahoma City that had happened a year before, April 19th, 1995, we started doing some intense planning. And on May 2nd, 1996, we had a man angry over an injury he had suffered while building the buildings in 1992, came back with a firearm. What he claimed to be was explosives in a bag and a dead man trigger, and took hostages. I wound up being one of those hostages. There were 4 of us held hostage for 90 minutes, and then when we were released, it took law enforcement another 4 hours to get him out of the building. And that incident truly changed my life. I began wondering, was that an isolated incident, or does this happen more than we're thinking in faith-based organizations? And I started researching, and he did his 17-year sentence, and I didn't lunch, I launched the Deadly Force Incident Study. I've launched way too many things through the years, but I didn't launch that. I've got to do spell check. I launched the Deadly Force Incident Study, and it's a study of deadly force incidents that occur at faith-based organizations or associated with faith-based organizations. How many of you know last weekend, or actually it'll be 2 weeks ago Saturday, a church in Gulfport, Mississippi was having an Easter egg hunt in a nearby park when one of their security people was killed. You know about that? Well, that qualifies as a DFI in our study. Didn't happen on the church ground, but it was a church function. So that's why I'm careful to make that distinction that it's associated with a faith-based organization. And we've got statistics out there. You can see that in 22 years, between 1999 and 2020, one thing the FBSN doesn't try to be is on breaking news. We don't play in that field because breaking news is always wrong. We stay behind the curveball a little bit. We're updated through 2020 right now, so we've got 22 years of data. But one of the things we've seen in that 22 years of data, we've tracked 2,361 deadly force incidents that occurred at faith-based organizations in the United States alone. No foreign countries, that's just the 50 United States and Washington, D.C. And it began to surprise me how often this does happen. But I began going around Colorado Springs at first, and then the rest of Colorado, speaking to different groups, Chamber of Commerce, churches, ministries, associations of different kinds would have me, and I would talk to them about readiness, just being ready. And in 2005, one of the places that listened to me was my own home church, New Life Church in Colorado Springs. And in 2012, I finally finished the book, Evil Invades Sanctuary, and we still have a few of those out there at the desk. I would want every church here to have a copy. I put so much into that I really hope, if you can't afford one, just tell me or whoever's helping me at the table there that you want one, and that you can't afford it, we'll give you the book. If you can buy it, that helps. They're just $12 a piece, but there is critical information in there for you. And I would hope that you would buy one of those. Well, New Life Church was one of them that listened to my request. We put together a team in 2005. We had a medical team, a technical team, and a protection team. Medical, of course, we know what medical is. Technical was the facilities guys. They know how to read the fire alarms, and they know which doors, which keys unlock which doors, and they keep track of the keys and all that stuff. So they were an important part of what we were doing. And then we had the protection team. And by 2006, we had grown to 14,000 people per weekend. We were having 500 first-time visitors every weekend. And we had 2 services on Sunday. If the pastor went over by 5 minutes in the first service, it caused tremendous problems because we had to get 2,500 cars out of the parking lot, 2,500 cars in, all these kids out of children's church and with the right parent, and new kids in who register for the right parent. So we had to have 2 or 3 talks with our pastor to make sure you don't go 5 minutes over. And then on November 2nd of 2006, we discovered that our senior pastor, who had started the church and grown it to the largest church in Colorado, was on the side having something going on with a gay massage therapist and methamphetamines. We discovered that on a Thursday. November 2nd was a Thursday. And by Sunday, he was gone. And I got to tell you, that kicks you in the gut. It kicks you in the gut. I've been praying for the people in Gateway Church. I can't imagine. It hurts to discover that somebody that has led you and your family so passionately also had a secret life. And I want to encourage everybody in here with something that's occurred to me through the years. You can't serve better than you live. It will catch up to you if you try. You are all representing a very, very important topic, the protection of people around you. And I've never said this publicly, but I've always appreciated when I started traveling with Dave. He told me one day, he said, guard your heart. Traveling on the road, there can be lots of temptations and things to try to trip you up. Guard your heart. And I'm asking all of you, guard your hearts. Stay truthful to Christ. Deny yourself and follow Him. It's worth it. It is absolutely worth it to lead that kind of a life. Well, when that happened to us, when we had pastor scandal, we then became the target of everybody who hated Christianity. Westboro Baptist showed up to say we were too gay. Soul Force showed up to say we weren't gay enough. And everybody in between with any kind of an axe to grind showed up to complain about our church and carry their sign so their agenda could get on the 10 o'clock news with a picture of our church behind it. So our director of security at the time asked me if I would start doing threat intelligence for him. He knew that I combed the internet continually looking for deadly force incidents. He said, it'll add just a little bit of time to your research time. Boy, did it. And so I began in January of 2007, I began the threat program for New Life Church. We dropped down to about 5,000 typical weekly attendance the summer of 2007. And then we got a new pastor in September of 2007 who actually came from Gateway Church. And we were gradually building back up. But every Sunday, I would give the security team a guesstimate of how rough of a Sunday we should expect. Is there anybody getting out of jail that's got a restraining order? Is there any threats showing up in social media? All this different stuff. Well, on December 9th, 2007, I watched the news early that morning, and I saw where a guy had gone into a Youth with a Mission 77 miles north of us and milled around in the hallways for 28 minutes, and nobody called 911. And by the way, a case study, you capture the notes to self that you need throughout this. I'm not going to slow up at every time you need to make a note to yourself, but there's one. 28 minutes he roamed the hallway. Not one person called 911. They finally asked him to leave. They ushered him out a door. As the door was open, he pulled a firearm and started just randomly shooting, injured several, killed 2, and disappeared into the night. Now, this was at a church in Aurora, Colorado, or Arvada, Colorado, 77 miles from us, 77 miles from our church in Colorado Springs. But I put us on high alert because the vice president of YWAM, Fred Markert, officed in our building. And I thought, if this is a threat directed at YWAM, we could be the next target. So we went to the highest alert we'd ever been that morning. One of the things, this is our front entry. We call it, it's the west main entry. That's the front, we call it front because it faces the highway. And of our 2,500 parking slots, 1,500 of them are on this side of the building. 1,000 on the east side, or 750 on the east side, and 700 on the south, or something like that. But what we did is we had one of the law enforcement officers. We had 3 extra duty officers every Sunday. We had one of them park his marked unit right here by the main front door. And that was just as a show of force to say, hey, we're watching. We had a guest speaker that day. We went through both services with Dr. Jack Hayford. Nothing happened. We thought we had escaped any assault on us. Jack Hayford ended his second service about 12:20, and he and our senior pastor, our new senior pastor, went up to our senior pastor's office upstairs right in this area, and we're having lunch. So I was up there doing executive protection for them, and the plan was that they were going to come down about 1:15 and meet with about 150 people gathered right down here with King's Seminary. And so at about 1:03, first of all, our law enforcement, our 3 extra duty law enforcement, rolled off campus at 1 o'clock. Our agreement with them was for 5 hours each Sunday morning, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. So all 3 uniformed extra duty police officers from CSPD rolled off campus at 1 o'clock. I'm upstairs doing executive protection for our pastor and Jack Hayford, and about 1:03, just as soon as those police officers had left, I heard over my radio one of our remaining security guys said, "We've got smoke at the North Main entry," right where that officer's car had been parked. He said, "It looks like a commercial-sized smoke canister. Stand by, I'll give you more information when I have it." At about 1:10, I wasn't hearing any more information. I told our pastor's secretary, Carla, I said, when they come out of their meeting, I'm going to take them down a back stairwell over here because there's something going on in the front area. I don't know what it is, and I just didn't want to lead them through an unknown. As I was saying that to her, I heard gunshots. They were multiple, they were loud, they were quick succession. It was obvious we were under attack. She ran into the pastor's office. They slammed the door, locked it. I took off towards the sound of the gunfire, and I started down this hallway. This is the stairwell right here that goes up to the executive wing. I came running down the stairwell, and I had my firearm out by this time, and I had it up so I wasn't muzzling people who were running up the stairwell. But it was so loud, you can tell by that hallway is over 100 yards long. It's over 30 feet wide. You see those hard quarry tiles and the drywall walls, drywall ceiling. It's an echo chamber. There was no way I could tell where the shots are even coming from. But as I was coming down the stairs, Buck, one of our other remaining security people there, was standing right where this picture was taken from. And he yelled to me over the sound of the gunfire and the people screaming. I was able to hear him say clearly that the shooter's coming in the doors to my left. So it's the top of that arrow there. And as I come around that corner and started towards him, it was obvious that he had on tactical clothing. It was obvious he had an AR. And he had just shot out all of the glass in all of those east entry doors. There was glass shot out all over there, and he was coming through the pair of doors off to the left side there as I was running up to him. And that's when I realized I've made a major mistake in life decisions. Yeah, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, isn't it? You ought to be there when you see it. But the best gun you have is the gun you have on you. So I knew my effective distance was 10 yards plus or minus on a good day with no adrenaline. And I knew his was 100 yards plus or minus depending on his skill sets and how he had that AR equipped. And I want to tell you, a .32 ACP is stupid. If you're worried about snakes or really big spiders, your .32 is going to be fine. But if you're protecting other people, it's not the right gun. And I'll go nose to nose, toe to toe with anybody in here that wants to argue. It's not the right gun for protecting people, all right? Get something bigger. But, like I said, what you have is what you have. And this is an actual police photo from his direction. This is what he saw coming in. This hallway was clear. I'm going to talk about that here in a moment. And all he could see was one old fat man running at him with a gun. And one thing, tunnel vision works both ways, folks. You go towards a bad guy like this, where do you think his attention is going? It's going off of kids and other people, and I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. It's coming to you. And that in itself is enough to save some people. And you got to do what you got to do. So I began breaking to my left, and the shooter was breaking to his right. I didn't know at the time he was a killer. From this point on, I'm going to call him a killer, because that's what he was. But I didn't know at this point that he'd killed anybody. But from now on, I'm going to call him Killer. Killer started to his right, I started to my left. You can see what we're doing is we're bringing building features in between us. There's columns and desks and different things like that. I wanted to get into this dark area right here in this picture. Doesn't show up very well here, so I'll zoom in on it. And this hallway labeled A there is where I slammed up against. And I had my front sight. I saw somebody here wearing a front sight. Yeah, I've been there, been through it. I was focused on that column. Figured when he comes across column B, that's where we'll engage the battle. And while I was there, I can tell you that what Ken was speaking of and what Dave speaks of is something that really happens. All the stuff related to adrenaline. And with me, one of the things is everything slows down. And my thought process is more like a conversation in my mind. And my conversation in my mind went something like this: you should pray. And I even answered myself. I mean, I remember specifically doing this. Good idea. I believe I will. And all this time I've got my front sight aimed on that column B there, and before I can even pray, I hear a guy yell behind me. Well, first of all, before the yell came a message over my radio that there was a second shooter. And so instead of praying, I cussed. My mom was in the audience once when I gave this presentation, and I heard her gasp. and I had to tell her later, Mom, that wasn't the only cuss word said in that church that day. You know, I don't try to do that, but, you know, sometimes it just comes out. But in the after-action review, the guy that put that over radio, I asked him why he said that. He said, I didn't say that. I said, Carl, be careful. Remember, there could be a second shooter. Well, the other thing on adrenaline is auditory exclusion. You hear about one out of every X amount of words. All I heard was second shooter. No sooner had he said that than I hear somebody yelling behind me. And I looked immediately at his hands. His hands were empty, so I knew he was no threat. And I yelled at him, told him to get out of the building, and he starts arguing with me. I mean, you can't make this kind of stuff up. And I was just bewildered. I'm trying to focus very much on column B because there's a guy with an AR going to come around that column any minute. And behind me is 700 people in between services still in the sanctuary, among which is my wife and daughter. And I don't want this guy getting in the sanctuary. I could see the empty hallway the same as he could. I knew there was nobody else there. And all that's between him and them is a 32 ACP. And I needed that thing to perform better than I'd ever seen it perform before. And so I told this guy, I said, you need to get behind me and get out of this building. And I pointed down this hallway that went out to the west entry there, the north entry. And he wouldn't do it. And then he said, I don't have a gun, give me yours. yeah, that was my response to him too. And then he said, fine, I'll go after him without it. And he takes about 2 steps out from me, and this column here that's labeled E just exploded in a series of gunfire. I see the guy's arm cartwheel. He jumps back behind me, and he said, the SOB shot me. Huh. You don't say. I just began tuning him out at that time. And then I saw something else that I hadn't seen before. Item C here in that doorway to hallway, what we call 160. I saw one of our brand new volunteer church security people, was not a police officer. This has been misreported in so many news outlets. Jean Assam, this was her third Sunday serving with us. And I saw her appear in that hallway. She yelled something at the gunman, which I knew she could see directly across the hallway from her. I still couldn't see him because he was coming down. Homicide investigators grilled me, wanting to know what did she say, and I said, I have no clue. But if I'd have been a bad guy, I'd have put my gun down because it was authoritative. And then I saw her and heard her shoot. She shot several times. I ran up and got beside her. We walked up to the killer at the same time. He was down there at the bottom of that red arrow. The tables were not there that day. I took this picture later. It was just an open hallway, as you saw in the police photo. But we got up to him at the same time and watched him die. And now I've taken you through the scene from my eyes and ears. Now I'm going to take you through the whole scene, because you'll always experience what you see and hear, and then after the investigation comes together, excuse me, then you'll catch up on what was really happening. We found out that it was the same killer from YWAM. He had killed at YWAM, then went home, went to bed, went to sleep for all we know. Got up early the next morning, started hitting internet cafes. He posted 13 suicide diatribes. In one of those diatribes, he said, like Cho, Eric Harris, Ricky Rodriguez, and others, I'm going out to make a stand against this sick, evil religion. And then he ended it with, Christian America, this is your Columbine. The FBI did not consider that a hate crime. True story. You can look up the hate crimes for 2007. There were none where victims were killed because of their religion, according to the FBI. That's a whole nother seminar. But then he came to our parking lot, sat in there. The FBI did track his cell phone. He had sat in our parking lot for over an hour on the phone to a cousin up in Idaho, as I recall. As soon as the police officers left, he rolled. He threw out the first smoke bomb at our north main entry. Then he drove his vehicle around our sanctuary, tossed out the next bomb at our south main entry, and then went and parked over by the tent facility by our east main entry. We've got 3 main entries there at the church. Buck, Dave, and Jean, all 3 went out to investigate the smoke, the first smoke. I was upstairs. This yellow part fits over the green part. I was upstairs when they were out there investigating the smoke. While they were out there, a couple came by and they told Jean, we saw the guys who threw the smoke bomb out of the pickup. It was only one person involved. He was driving a car and not a pickup. One of the things every police officer in here can tell you is oftentimes the worst witnesses are the witnesses. They see things that didn't happen. They miss important things that did. And believe it or not, you're not going to get good information all the time from everybody. And some of them people are adamant about what they saw. But we know, I trust CSPD's investigation of it, that there was one killer and he drove one car. So some of that stuff came out in the investigation. But nonetheless, Jean went to the middle of the building to take the report. While she was taking the report, the second smoke bomb went off. She didn't even see it. None of the people inside did. We got this later from one of our medical team who was outside, and they came to the police after the investigation, said, hey, I saw a smoke bomb there, but it wasn't on the north main entry, it was the south. He said, and I put it out with snow. Well, they removed the snow, and sure enough, there was a second smoke bomb under there. But this guy had put it out, and then went on to his car and went home. Thought, that's odd. But then when he saw the news, he thought, maybe that had something to do with it. I mean, even people who are on your team do some crazy things. I mean, we had one idiot that was carrying a .32 ACP. So Gene moved to the middle, and then Buck and Dave were out there looking at this smoke bomb and talking about it, and they started thinking they could hear distant gunfire. And they looked at each other and said, that sounds like gunfire. And you got to understand, this is over a 200,000 square foot building. There were piles of snow everywhere, which acts like a sound absorbent. And there was a lot of snow on the ground. And they were telling each other, that sounds like gunfire, doesn't it? Well, it was on the far side of the building. But they came in through the building and walked up that long hallway, fast walk. They didn't even run. Just a fast walk, kind of concerned. And the closer they got to those east main entries, they didn't know that the killer was coming across there shooting. He went through one 30-round mag and slapped in another one. And then they saw him come across the doors, and they could see the puffs of smoke and hear it better. They knew then this was the real deal. And other people who weren't on the security team were hearing this and not thinking anything of it. It's ice falling off this roof. It's a stack of chairs falling over. You know, events is moving tables and dropping, they had all these, there's a normalcy bias that we all have, that we want to rule out any ideology that this could be bad. And Buck and Dave were the only ones from far away who heard the sound and thought, that's something we need to go look at. Everybody else just went about their normal business. They didn't know that the killer had come across the parking lot, shot multiple times into the Works family van. David and Marie Works had been in church that morning to hear Jack Hayford. We're so glad to hear him with their 4 daughters. Their daughters had already been on mission trips all around the world. This family was sold out to Christ and excited about what God was doing, and their daughters come out to get in their van. David was on the passenger side. Marie was driving. David heard the gunshots and heard something hit the van. Rachel was just outside on the passenger side by the sliding door of the van, digging in her purse for something. And he saw her get shot, saw her go down on the pavement. And he yelled at the rest of his family to get down. They all got down. David wound up being the only one who ever saw the shooter from his family. Nobody else even saw him, the killer. Dave heard the shooting stop briefly. He threw open his door to run to Rachel, not knowing that the shooter was right there in front of his van. The shooter saw the door, killer saw the door come open and turned his rifle on David, shot him several times. David nearly died in the hospital. And when he woke up, he wanted to know, how's Rachel? And Marie told him, she's gone, Daddy, and so is Stephanie. He said, no, Stephanie wasn't hit. I was there, I saw. She said, no, Daddy, Stephanie's gone too. Lost 2 of his 4 daughters in an instant. Killer went on, shot another lady coming along there in a car, coming this way, shot her in the shoulder, then turned his rifle and started shooting down our hallway. We counted 27 bullet holes in our hallway, and not one child was hit. And I'm going to show you why. When the killer started shooting down the hallways, in fact, before he turned his rifle to shoot down the hallways, when Buck and Dave saw that it's a real gun, they were not armed. And they started down that hallway clearing kids. And they were clearing them with authority. Somebody asked me once, did they tell them exactly where to go? And I thought, you've never been in a critical incident. No, they just made them scared to death to stay there. They too were saying words these kids had probably never heard. Kids were blowing out of that building like explosions. They wanted nothing but away from those two crazy security guys. They came down, Buck ran down to the end of the aisle and turned around. Dave ran down to hallway 1, then went out to get his firearm. And Jean moved into her position in hallway 160. These were the shots I heard from upstairs, so I ran towards the top of the stairs, then down. Buck showed me where the killer was coming through the doors. I ran into my position as the killer took up his position. Buck ran out to get his firearm. Jean moved into her position, and that's where it ended. These things go down extremely quick. Chacon and Roman were two of our CSPD officers who had been on duty that morning. They were at the corner of Old Ranch Road and Highway 83, right down here, when they got the radio call that there was an active shooter at the church. They went back code 3, that's 1.1 mile from the lower arrow to the top arrow, 1.1 mile. They went back code 3 as hard and fast as they could get there. It was all over when they got there. They found me standing over the killer. Lessons learned. First of all, we had nobody right there. And I'm talking about an exterior team. I was called early in the morning on November 5th, 2017 by a news reporter. She asked me if I was hearing what was happening out of Sutherland Springs, Texas. At the time, there were already 12 dead, so I knew it was already the worst killing at a church ever. And every time the news came out, there'd be more. She said, do you think this is a terrorist attack? I said, I doubt it highly. She said, how can you say that this early on? I said, because I've studied these incidents. I said, I'm going to tell you two things that I'm going to assume is, number one, it's a domestic. And number two, it could have been stopped outside. And I knew nothing about the details at that point. I've since walked that church, walked it with Stephen Williford, walked it with Frank Pomeroy, walked it with different people who were there, and got a lot of the details. And it was a domestic. It could have been stopped outside. 4-1, more likely something's going to at least start outside than inside. So have as many people as you want inside, but make sure you're watching outside too. That's extend your perimeter as far as you can. We had no tactical training, not skills or adrenaline awareness, been through none of that. If we would have, I wouldn't have been carrying a .32 ACP. Enough of that. We had no trauma medical training or supplies. We had scene saturation. You remember that slide of Buck, Dave, and Jean all on the smoke? We had 12 security people serving our church, even when it was 14,000 people. When we were down to 5,000, we still had 12 security people. That day, we had 12 security people. 8 of them had left when the service ended to watch the Denver Broncos play the Kansas City Chiefs. There were 4 of us left in the building. 3 of them were on the smoke. I would have been. I felt like the guy who was assigned where I didn't want to be. I wanted to be, you serve in church security for months at a time and nothing big happens, and now there's smoke. I wanted to be there. You can't have scene saturation. Assign 2 people, to go and deal with a situation. Everybody else should go to their predetermined points. And 2 big mistakes we made is we didn't have good identification. And after our event, an FBI agent showed me a remarkable thing for ununiformed protectors to be using. He said, it's what we use at the FBI. and he showed it to me, and I knew I had to get it, and they're out here today. Mike Lessman, you can have a bad guy down holding your gun on him and deploy don't shoot me banner, and it gives you protection 380 degrees, or 540 degrees, 360, 180. Anybody coming in any window or through the roof is going to have a cause for pause. They're going to think, why is that guy wearing something that says security? Now, it's not going to save your life if you're acting stupid and he yells at you to put the gun down, and you turn around and aim a gun at him. Well, we're still going to be naming a conference room after you. But it will give him cause for pause. So use it, be aware of it. I believe U.S. Law Shield is out here. I didn't see them. But to have a defense type carrier with you. You all familiar with what U.S. Law Shield and Right to Bear and all these different ones do? You familiar with that? Have that. A bad time to be asking yourself if you needed it is after the incidents happened. So, and I just want to say, when it happens, it's not going to be like you thought it would. It's going to be quick. It's not going to look like anything you talked about in your little roundtable discussions and your committee meetings. It's going to look totally different. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying don't do your meetings. Do them. Have them. Do your planning. But understand it's not going to go down like you think. And your political opinions, your predispositions on whether we should carry firearms or not in a church, all that, none of that's going to matter. The only thing that's going to matter is how prepared you are at that moment to stop a killer. That's the only thing that's going to matter. And I just say it this simple. Whatever you have is all you'll have. The time for training is behind you. You need to be seeking out people like Ken Alexandro and some of the people that have tables out there now. You need to be seeking those people out and getting the training. And I want to just illustrate for you how fast these things go. This is an audio clip from the Aurora Theater shooting. This is not the New Life shooting, but man, when I heard this, it sounded so familiar, and it took me back. And for those of you who've ever been involved in a killing attack within a building, I'm warning you now, it'll take you back there. But when you hear this, every 6.3 shots, a person died.
Aurora 911, where's your emergency? I can't hear you. What address? Theater, Aurora, Colorado. I can't hear you. Give me the address again. There's gunshot. What address? Say it loud.
The operator never got the address from the first caller. That went on for 3 minutes. The killer was done when police got there. He was outside. He was walking towards his vehicle. These things go down extremely quick. As I began traveling the country, I began recognizing that I was picking up on a lot of things that were things that I haven't thought of. Every time I speak to a church, I run into somebody that tells me something new. We learn from you when we go around and do these. And I began to think there's got to be a central depository where all these good ideas can reside. It can't be just my good ideas. I wanted to start an association where we could network with each other and see church security operators and faith-based. Not all of them are churches. Some of them are like Focus on the Family or Compassion International. They're both members. We've got ministries and faith-based organizations where we need those folks to be able to know each other and talk to each other. So we began the Faith-Based Security Network, and we teach that you should be ready, willing, and able. And it's just a connected network of people who do the same thing, and their hearts are together. And Jimmy and Dave were the first two members of the FBSN. I wonder if I can just ask everybody here who's a member of the FBSN, would you please stand up? Wow. Thank you all. This is incredible. We need more. We need more. It's building. We've got members in 47 states now. And some of the things we do, right there's a coupon code that you can do your QR thing, take a picture of it or whatever, and it'll get you into our membership. It's the connectivity, the collective acumen, the sharing of best practices, resources, and if you use that code, EVENT50, capital E, VENT 50, for being at this event, it'll give you $50 off your first year membership. And it's just $100 a year anyway. And if you want to do the online training, there's a learning management system where you can get certified to 3 different levels. You'll see more about it when you get in there. But we teach be ready. That means physically and spiritually present. Show up. Be there when it's time for you to protect your flock, and be there spiritually. If you're in this because you have fighting skills and protection skills, and you're seeing the faith-based circle as the latest great revenue generator, you're in it for the wrong reasons. You've got to be spiritually present as well. And like I know Dave will say on the last day, if you don't know what that means, come to us. We will help you cross that line and understand what it truly means to serve the one who absolutely gave his all for us. He is our model, and above everything else, we're ambassadors of Christ. Second thing is, you've got to be willing. You're going to hear from Greg Stevens. Am I right? Greg's coming to this. This is one of his main things. You've got to be willing, mentally prepared. Ken Alexandro spoke on mental readiness this morning. And Greg will talk to you about mentally prepared. Then you have to be able. That means you're trained and equipped. You can do it. And how many of you have ever heard of Tawanza Sanders? Anybody? I know Dave and Jimmy have, because Tawanza Sanders went to his Wednesday night Bible study, and he texted his friends just before he went into the Wednesday night Bible study. And he texted that comment. He just told them, a life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives. That was a Jackie Robinson quote. And he went inside his church, Mother Emanuel AME, in Charleston, South Carolina, June of 2015. And he was among those who were sitting there with the killer who came in. And when they went to prayer, the killer started around the table, he saw up close and personal what a 45 ACP does to a person's head at 3 feet. He saw it happen multiple times. He saw the killer going around the table, killing those people he loved. And when it came time for his 87-year-old Aunt Susie Jackson, he stepped in front of that 45. And he said, "Sir, why are you doing this? What? You don't have to be doing this." And that's why we know what the killer said about black people. And I have never repeated it, and I never will. But if you've read the news articles, you know what he said about black people. And then he shot Tawanza, and Tawanza went down. We know about this conversation because Tawanza's own mother, Felicia Sanders, was laying on top of her grandchild trying to protect him, pretending to be dead. And she heard this whole conversation, then she saw Tawanza get killed. She saw him go down. She saw Aunt Susie get shot. And when Susie fell to the ground, Tawanza was using the last energy in his body to stroke his aunt's hand and say, "It's okay. okay. This guy was ready and willing. He had the heart of a protector. I look forward to hugging him when I get to heaven. He had the heart of a protector. Last Saturday, I attended another funeral. How many of you heard of Shedd? Eddie Shedd, yeah. Easter egg hunt. Bad guy shows up, mad because his son is estranged from him, grabs his baby, wants to get off with him. He starts the shooting, and Eddie Shedd stepped in between him and the children. And like Tawanza, except with more authority, demanded that he drop the gun because Shedd, even though he was a good shot, he didn't feel like he could get a good shot on the body or the head because the baby was right here. And Shedd's pastor told me that he crippled him, he disabled him. But because he only disabled him, the bad guy was able to kill Shedd. Now here's a man who was ready, willing, and able, but even though he couldn't get the shot he wanted, he was going to do something. He probably knew it was going to cost him his life, but he was not going to let that guy run out of there with that baby. Wasn't going to happen. I heard some of the security team at the funeral tell that Shedd was their boss. They called him our chief, and these are police officers. And he had never been in law enforcement. Shedd was a professional caterer, but he was the boss of all these guys. They looked up to him. That was a model of gallantry.